Hello students, lesson Exploring Vulnerability Assessment Framework from organizations like IPCC and UNDP. Main objective of these lessons are to understand the core component of vulnerability such as exposure, sensitivity, adaptive capacity, to interpret the phase of United Nations Development Programs, COBRA, the methodology to achieve community level participatory research, profiling and adaptation prioritization. The third objective is to utilize the multidimensional indicator normalizing techniques to construct composite vulnerability indices, and the fourth objective is to compare the application of these framework across agriculture, water, resource, public health and urban sectors, taking into account national case studies. And the last objective is to perform context-specific climate risk assessment by evaluating methodological strength, limitations, equity consideration and hybrid approaches. So let us start the discussion. As I mentioned, the chapter deals with vulnerability assessment strategies of IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is a governing international body which caters to scientific knowledge related to climate dynamics. The organization was established in the year 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and UNEP. IPCC is not involved in the creation of original research, rather it investigates and examines several research outputs pertaining to it. The results or the outcome from the research publications are provided to government agencies for policy making and better governance. IPCC dedicatedly publishes comprehensive assessment reports every 6 to 7 years. It also issues guidelines and synthesized reports and articles about the same. Scientists, academicians from across the world contribute as author, reviewer, experts, and in other capacities in approving the key summaries of the report. Students, this practice provides authenticity as well as credibility to the organization. The concept of vulnerability is crucial to the organization. In the third and fourth assessment report of IPCC, this vulnerability is defined as the degree to which a system is susceptible to or unable to cope with adverse effect of climate change. This includes climate variability and extremes. Now I will describe about the facts behind vulnerability. What is the theoretical basics? Students, it is desirable to define the nature of the term vulnerability in relation to climate change before going into the actual frameworks. In its simplest form, vulnerability is the extent to which a system is prone to suffering as a result of being subjected to climate hazards. Nevertheless, the present interpretations incorporate several elements: the physical landscape, social and economic status, the capacity to adapt to change, and the degree to which the human well-being is endangered by the exposure to hazards. There are a number of fundamental ideas on vulnerability. The first one is exposure. This is the presence of people, livelihood, ecosystems, infrastructure or economic assets in location where they are prone to be negatively impacted by climate risk like flood, drought, cyclone, heat waves or sea level rise. Second one is sensitivity. How sensitive a system or population is to climate stimuli. An example would be an agriculture society that relies on rainfall and which is highly vulnerable to climate change compared to an urban society that relies on piped water supply. The third is adaptive capacity. Adaptive capacity is the capacity of people, group or institution to adjust, to manage and recover after effects of climate. These are financial ability, technology, knowledge, governance support and social network. Students, the three elements are typical feature of the structure of both International Panel on Climate Change and United Nations Development Programme, though the definition focuses and the methodological implementation vary. Now let me explain to you vulnerability. Global System Development Pre-Third Assessment Report prior to 2001. This says that early IPCC approach, in the previous IPCC assessments, vulnerability was only addressed mainly in terms of the sensitivity and adaptive capability, where exposure was often inferred. It was a strong biophysical and investigated the direct effects of the climate impacts on physical system like crop, water supply, forests or biodiversity. At this time, the socio-economic factors were recognized but not incorporated in the analysis frameworks. Third assessment report of IPCC 2001. It's a great conceptual change. What is it? The third assessment report by the IPCC took a more holistic approach and comprehensive perspective in defining vulnerability in clear terms as a function of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. This three became the foundation of numerous vulnerability studies in the world. The TAR framework acknowledged that vulnerability is not merely the issue of climatic conditions, but also highly influenced by socio-economic disparities, failure in the institution, and lack of development. Now, let me explain to you the IPCC fourth assessment report, which came in 2007. This is related to the framework popularization. That was the extent to which vulnerability framework was widely accepted throughout the world in the fourth assessment report in AR4. Researchers, governments, and development agencies made extensive use of it. The framework placed vulnerability in the wide context of risk and was associated with adaptation planning. IPCC fifth assessment report that came in 2014. It is related to the risk framework. AR5 essentially recognized the conceptual approach by moving the model, which was based on vulnerability, to a risk-oriented framework. In this model, risk has been defined as risk is equal to hazard multiplied by exposure multiplied by vulnerability. So, in this case, vulnerability was further subdivided into sensitivity and absence of adaptive capacity. Although the analytical focus had changed to the relationship between the hazards and the exposure and vulnerability, this theory is similar to the disaster risk theory applied by United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction. Recent publications, IPCC 6th Assessment Report in the year 2021 to 2022. AR6 enriched the knowledge by taking into account current socioeconomic development pathways, climate justice, differential vulnerability, systematic risk, climate change feedback loop, and development. It highlights that vulnerability is dynamic, which varies with the governance structure, environmental degradation, demographic change, and social inequalities.